Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Passion Talks, another edition, another guest. And today our guest is very special because I'm yet to meet a guy who has done Ironman Kona, and I've heard a lot about all that Ironman event World Championship. But then this is the first time I'm actually going to interact with someone, and I shared it on our platform on the Telegram group the motivational video of Kona after I interacted with Brett today evening. So that was pretty exciting. So I thought might as well share it with everyone. Brett details I've already shared with all the group members. He is an Ironman. He started off in his school days as a swimmer, water polo player, and other journey which I'll be handing over the mic to him for sharing the things. And first of all, welcome to all our guests, and welcome, Brett. It's such a pleasure to have you here. And I know it's past midnight and we've been keeping you awake, but then thanks for your time and agreeing to share your thoughts with us. To set the ball rolling, I would request you to please start from how it all started, your school days, wherein you were into swimming, and then how did you become a sedentary guy with a 105 kilogram weight, and then again back to representing the country into Ironman events. Over to you.
Thank you. By the way, my there is no topic that would keep me up at 12:30 at night to talk about. But so, by the way, just to be clear, so it's actually pretty cool to be part of this, and thanks to Pritam, who's one of my colleagues at Mars, who actually asked me to participate in this particular forum. It's always nice when you have someone who thinks you've got something of interest or value to share and say, when personally, if you look at my bio, I just think I'm another guy in the street, right? There's I've been on a journey and it's been a lot of fun, but I'm just another bloke on the street, right? So I appreciate the ask, and so tonight, I'll give you my journey, and it'll be from my journey's perspective. There's no magic behind it. Take what you can out of it, learn what you can from it, because that's what I've done. I've asked lots of questions and learned from many people along the way, because I don't know the answers. I had to work that out myself, but you take all the inputs, and we'll have a bit of fun. Hopefully a lot of fun, actually. Hopefully a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So thanks for the intro, Rommel. Clearly my name is Brett Issac. I'm based in Australia, in country New South Wales, sort of 500-600 kilometers south of Sydney, just to sort of show you where we are. And I've been doing triathlon now for about 10-11 years, but that wasn't my primary sport, by the way. So if I take you back to when I was very much younger, I was I can't actually remember the exact date, but I was around about 5-6 years old, where born in Zimbabwe. So if you're picking up a strange accent, that I was born and raised in Zimbabwe, and learned to swim from around about the 5 or 6 year age. And I've always been nearly always been very excited about swimming. Loved swimming. My parents put me into sort of the early swim schools, where you were learning in Zimbabwe, at least anyway, learning to swim in someone else's backyard pool, and then going through the process of actually moving from that environment into a full squad, where they teach you technique, and then you go into competitive swimming, right? So that's right from the age of 5 or 6. I suppose at the particular junior school that I went through, I was always top of my age group from a swimming perspective. So clearly I had some talent there, I guess, but it wasn't just swimming. I had a crack at everything, right? I played hockey, I played soccer, I tried cricket. I was pretty rubbish at it. I played tennis, badminton, you name it. You put a ball or a racket or a bat in front of me, I'd have a go. And I'm passionate about the outdoors. I'm passionate about, in some ways, team sports, but just sports in general, right? So I'm not good at all of them. But I will always give it a go, and that stayed with me even to this day and age. Right now, I'll give everything a go. So pretty much all the way through junior school playing, really focusing on swimming and being at my school level, you know, a top swimmer, and then moving into high school, continuing the swimming career, or you know, certainly at a club level, and making some success at state times, but always there were a few gentlemen ahead of me in my age group who were much stronger swimmers, and those gents went on to be represent Zimbabwe at the Olympics or the Commonwealth Games, and those sorts of level competitions, right? So I was always the number 5, always behind them, right? So but that's okay though, because what I did do is when I moved into high school, I came across the sport of water polo. You know, basically for those who aren't familiar with water polo, it's soccer in the water combined with wrestling is what it is, right? So it's a contact sport. It's a brutal, tough sport, but it's a great team sport. It's a great competitive sport, and you've got to be fit and you've got to be strong in the water, and you can't have any fear. And I got a hold of this game of water polo and went, "Wow, this is good fun. This is much better than swimming up and down lanes, right? And all day long, I'll get stuck into this." And so my high school career then switched from being a focus of swimming into water polo, and you know, throughout my high school years, sort of got better and better, and to the point where I made the national school side for Zimbabwe. From probably at the age of 16, representing the under 18 side. And then by the time I was 17, 18, representing both schoolboy water polo and national men's water polo sides, playing in South Africa in their regional competitions. Because obviously we're not a powerhouse of water polo, but, you know, that gave me a lot of exposure. So you know, that swimming has been the background of my sporting career. I mean, I played rugby union at a fairly competitive level as well, but never thought of myself as a runner at all, and have always sort of figured I was pretty slow in the running sort of scenes. So that was just a means to play rugby with, running. There was an interesting sort of outcome of I suppose my overall fitness, where when I was training for rugby union in the off season, I actually made it into the school cross country side, and that surprised me. Then it surprised me to see, okay, well, geez, I'm not really a runner, but I've made a cross country side over 5 kilometers. And only when I started endurance running did I go, actually, clearly, you know, I have a big endurance engine fueled by this, or built by the swimming thing, but I can actually translate that to running. So I might be rubbish over 100-meter sprint, but over 5, 10, nowadays 15, 21, whatever kilometers, I can hold a pretty good pace. So, you know, so that's basically where I've come from a sporting background, built on swimming. Participated in anything that had a ball, a racket, a bat with, I'd give it a go, and I still do that to this day. I'll pause there.
Yeah, so I'll just, that's a good point which you said. You know, I've also felt that, you know, it's not very, very important that there are a lot of parents who are here to listen to all this. So it's very important to indulge kids into sports, even if they are not the best. I mean, everybody wants that, you know, children should be very competitive. They should be performing very, very well. I don't think it's very important. Yeah, if it is happening, then it's fine. But then you should not pressurize them so much that if they are not into competitive thing, then they should not be allowing. So you should encourage them into sports, and they'll automatically enjoy. And the personality which comes out of all these activities, like you said, the aerobic engine which you had carried you through for so long. I mean, till now, I think, I'm sure it plays a major role. Those childhood days really build you up as far as the aerobic capacity is concerned. And though you say you've not been running during those times once you were swimming, but then it really helps. And I've seen a lot of children who start with swimming do very well in triathlon, because swimming is, I personally feel, there's a lot of technique which is involved, unlike running or maybe cycling, because swimming that way is very, very technical. I'm sure you know it better than us, but then you picked up so early. That's why transition would have been much easier than somebody who learns swimming at a very later stage. You know?
Yeah.
That's why I think all those parents who are listening.
Yeah,
Must
and
yes.
I appreciate you bringing the parent side of things into that as well, right? Because I think it's so important that we don't, you know, you let your kids be kids, and I've got the challenge
Right.
of a very competitive daughter, right? Who, and I was sharing with you earlier, she's already said, you know, if you were to walk into the room right now and say to my daughter, "What do you want to do?" She'll tell you, "I'm playing for Australia in the Olympics for water polo." Right? By the way, I never
Wonderful.
made her go down water polo path. She went down that on her own. I was trying to make
Right.
her become a triathlete, but you know, let your kids be kids. Let them
Right.
have fun. Let them understand the nature of sports, of team activities, of
Right.
individual activities, and they will find where their passion lies. Because once you find the passion, right? I mean, I found mine with water polo firstly, and then in my second life, I found that with triathlon. Um,
Right.
they will commit and they will dedicate, you know, as much as they can, and that you're able to that sport, and away they go, right? And if they don't have to be Olympians, they don't have to be Kona people, they don't have to be age group winners. They've just got to
Right.
have a healthy life and a healthy mind, and feel that
Absolutely.
they have something, you know, that to work towards, and a distraction from screens and all the other things that are going on in life at the moment, right? So I
Right.
think it's a really key point to point out, and I'm trying to pull my daughter back, right? I'm trying to, hey,
Right.
just be a child, you're only 13 years old, just be a kid at the moment. So
True.
yeah, it's an important life lesson, I think.
No, very rightly brought up. So if you are having fun the way you said, then automatically you would keep doing the same thing again and again. But
Correct.
then if you remove the fun out of it, then becomes a kind of a routine, mundane task, and then you can sustain for some time, but then not for in long term. It's not going to help. So very
Yeah.
nicely brought up. So tell
And you know,
me, yeah, sure.
it's funny because it's funny because she's a competitive swimmer and she's a competitive water polo player at
Right,
state and national level already. And there are, when you go through to a high level state swim meet, you'll see records of kids, right? And there are kids who have
right,
phenomenal records in swimming. I mean, their times are unbelievable at 13 or 14 or 15 years old,
right.
and they're nowhere to be seen anymore. They've gone
Yeah,
out the scene, right?
exactly.
And it's because they haven't had their childhood to have fun. And you can
Right,
do both, right? But I've always sort of said to my child, this isn't about you being the best at 13, 14, 15, 16. This is about you being at the best when you're hitting your peak in your life. And so all
right,
you
right,
do at the moment is have fun, build your friendships, learn the technique, learn the art of the sport. Well, I don't really care what the sport was, right? But whatever it is, and you're in it for the long term. And you know, that's why I guess, you know, when we go back to my story, I couldn't go back to swimming for many years, right? Because I'd swum up and down that black line so many times.
yeah,
You know, I was just
right,
like, I don't want to swim anymore.
right. I mean, taking this analogy to running as well. So these days we find a lot of runners also they do the same mistake. Instead of having fun or enjoying the run, they go for personal best and graduating from half to full to ultras within a span of 1 year or 2 years. So it's very, very important to enjoy what you're doing, and that's why you'll have longevity. Otherwise, there's no point doing it for 2 years, 3 years. See, if you're training for Olympics, that's a different thing. You
Yeah. Yeah.
do that.
But
But then if
they
you're
paid.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, they paid professionals, right? I'm going to make an assumption. Most of the listeners here tonight are like us, right? We dads,
yeah, yeah,
we're husbands, wives, um, full-time work. You know, we don't have the capacity and the you know, the yeah, the capacity to do what those guys do, right? So we can only do what we can do with what we've got and what we've been given.
right.
So, by the way, that wasn't always the way for me in triathlon, and we'll come to that. We'll come to that story as we
Sure.
move along, right? So, um, so that it's important that I paint the picture that I've come from a background of pretty high level sport. I mean, swimming and water
Yeah,
polo at national level.
true.
And I think that um, I've had the I've had the blessing of being a I'm not a technically gifted swimmer. I've
Okay,
been told my stroke is ugly but effective. Okay, so I
okay,
don't mind if it gets me through an Ironman fast. I'm happy with that. I
very
don't
good.
care what it looks like. I'll just get through it. Um, but when I hit about 22, I left Zimbabwe and went to the UK, and this was
Okay,
the beginning of really next 6 to 8 years of actually not doing any sport at all. And I spent
Okay.
4 years in the UK. No sport, no training. I don't know if anyone's lived in the UK, but well, for me, it wasn't the most conducive place to go, and all I wanted to do was visit bars and have a bit of a laugh, right? And because it was my first time out of Africa and into a a first world country, which was amazing. And then from the UK, I then moved to Australia, Sydney, and again continued that sort of lack of sport and lack of exercise habit that I'd formed, and before I knew it, I find out I was sort of 105 kilos. So this is probably down from when I was at my fittest at low 70 kilos up to 105 kilos in my mid to late 20s, and you go, wow, okay, that happened pretty quickly. I didn't even see it coming. And
Okay.
this is not the type of person that I personally want to be, in terms of I don't want to be an overweight person and heading in a direction that may be unhealthy. This and I found this out by going to a health checkup, and they gave me my stats on my sugar levels and my weight and my BMI and all that sort of stuff. And the two things that hit me, BMI is an interesting one because I think your bone density plays a role into that. So I don't live by BMI and never have. But I thought my sugar levels were suggesting that my eating habits were wrong, and that my weight, at 105 kilos, I'm not the tallest guy. I'm 181 centimeters, so I'm not tall. So, it was starting to show. And that surprised me, and I went, wow, okay, I don't really want to go much larger than that. I should actually add that the males in my family have all died due to heart or cancerous diseases coming from the colon and stuff like that, right? So overweightness has been a problem in the males in my family. And I went, well, that's not the way I want to go at 32 years old. And so there were two things that I did. I made a decision that day. I came out of that health check and I went, right, there's two things I'm going to do. Number one, I'm actually going to start eating properly. So I wasn't eating breakfast or I wasn't eating lunch, and just not being thoughtful around an appropriate diet. And I hate the word diet, but it's just, the appropriate way of eating. And I'll talk a little bit more at the moment. And the second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to actually start to do some form of exercise, right? And I didn't want to join a gym because I'm not a fan of gyms personally. They don't really do anything for me. And I didn't really want to swim at that point in time. So that left me with nothing else really but to run, I suppose. And I'll talk about it in a moment. So I'll go back to the eating. So I touched on, I never ate breakfast. Sometimes, well, actually often never ate lunch at work, and then just came home and ate dinner. But what I did do is I snacked on, like your bag of crisps or chips, or I had a Coke, and that's what got me through the day. And literally the next day I made a decision. From then on, I'm going to eat breakfast. That's the first thing I'm going to do. I'll take Coke out of my days for Monday to Friday. I will take chips and all those other snacky things that aren't particularly healthy. Monday to Friday, I'm going to be not disciplined and restricted, but I'm just going to make sure I eat the right things at the right time and stop the wrong things. And on the weekend, go for your life, do what you need to do, right? That was the first change that I committed to. And because it wasn't hard, right? I mean, I know I've got beers at the end of the week. I'm going to the beers, right? So that was the first thing. And the second thing was, when I was explaining this to a mate and whinging or complaining about not wanting to do gym, he said, well, come for a run with me tomorrow. And it was interesting because he said tomorrow, and straight away, I suppose my competitive nature went, oh, all right, okay, let's have a look at this. And I made an excuse. I can remember I made an excuse. I don't have the right shoes. And he goes, don't worry about that. We'll just do a short one. And if anyone knows Sydney, there's the Hyde Park in the middle of Sydney. It's not very big. It's in the shape of an oval, and it's about 2 kilometers in circumference. And so I rocked up the next morning on his suggestion and met him, and we went for a run together. He was a very fit guy. He was a runner already. And so you can imagine this thin fit runner with this 105 kilo bloke in the most inappropriate gear. I was wearing the wrong shoes, wrong shorts, everything you can think about wrong. And we went on a run, and as I think I shared with you a bit earlier, he ran backwards faster than I could run forward, right? Those first couple of days. But here's the thing: is I had already made that decision and committed to myself. I mean, this is an important thing. You got to commit to yourself, not commit to others. If you're committing to others, you've got yourself a get out of jail card there. I'd committed to myself that I was going to make the change and I was going to see it through. And I then, the next morning I was there again, and the next morning, and the next morning, and the next morning, and it just snowballed from there, right? And you know, there's lots of mini stories in the middle of that, which I'm happy to share, you know, in terms of how it went. But you know, it started a journey around, actually I love to run. Running is my favorite, by the way. I have a swim, bike, and run. I love to run. Run is my favorite. It's not my fastest, it's not my best, but it's my favorite. And I think it sort of set me in the direction of where I've got to, which is, you know, an Ironman. And I have latched onto anyone who has something to say about how to improve your nutrition, your recovery, your racing, your everything. And I've just soaked it all in because I've become a scholar of the sport almost for myself, not for anybody else. And I just went, this is going to make it better for me in terms of a dad. You know, I want my kids to see me being competitive. I want my kids to see me being committed. I want my kids to see me being determined. I want my kids to see me having a go. I want my wife to think I'm looking good. I want to be an example for other kids, and so that's been sort of the crux of it, and it's gone from there. I'll pause.
So that's a beautiful story. So see, important point I want viewers to understand is, you know, it's not too complicated if you want to start. Small things, you know. It's like, even if you have to do cheat days, you know, you've been not following a proper nutrition plan or a diet plan for a long time and you're overweight, it doesn't mean that tomorrow you'll be super fit. These days we find a lot of fat diets, you know. People will stop eating dinner, they'll stop eating breakfast, thinking that 1 week they'll reduce weight, not realizing it's a long-term thing. It's not that after, you need to have something which you can sustain for long, not just for a week or 10 days or a month. So any diet, if you want to start, make sure you're able to do it for the whole life. It's not that you, time and again, I'm saying the same thing. It should be sustainable for longer duration, be it any kind of diet which you want to. Like in your case, you knew you had 2 cheat days, 5 days a week, you could eat what you want. So that's a very, very valid point. And once you start seeing your results in your running, then obviously your level of commitment also goes up. It's like both ways, you know. And if you're running more, it's your nutrition and diet. And if you want to improve, which generally everybody wants to, because you start running, you gain so much of time, then you read a lot. And you, the way you said, you know, you want to ask anyone and everyone, whatever inputs you can take, try and implement what suits you, and then you go ahead with that. So beautiful points brought out.
You've touched on a very important point, and I loathe, I hope that word resonates with everyone. I loathe the word diet. Diet is a short-term, short fix, non-sustainable word in my life. It has to be a lifestyle change. It has to be a lifestyle change, and then it becomes sustainable, right? Because you build into your everyday living with your, you know, with yourself and your family and everything that you, every decision you make. And even the I've got a very terrible echo going on there.
Right. So okay, tell us the second part of the journey now.
Say that again, Rommel.
Yeah, tell us the second part, you know, after how did you start Ironman,
I think you've asked me, because there's a bit of an echo going on. I think you've asked me about how did I get into Ironman, which is fine. So okay, we fast track. You know, my first year, I think I gave myself a goal to run a half marathon in the first year, and I created a charity for me to, you know, to aspire to, because then it became accountable to someone else. That's another important point of how I work. I like to be accountable, And so that set me on my path for my first year of not only weight loss, but fitness for the running, to run my first half marathon. And I did that within the first, I think it was 9 months. And I think I did that in just under 2 hours, which is an amazing thing for me. I was very sick at the time as well, by the way. But by that time, I had already dropped, I reckon, 15 kilos by the time I ran that first half marathon. And it was at that point that a new gentleman joined my work and started talking about he was going to do this half Ironman, and I'd never heard of this race before, and I was like, "What? Tell me all about this half Ironman and what does this involve?" And I just thought it was the most insane thing that some person was going to swim just under 2Ks and then go and ride a bike for 90 kilometers, and then at the end of it run another half marathon. I just, wow, that is crazy. I've got to do this. So I went pretty much, over the course of one season, gone from a very, I did have, by then I'd already, tried triathlon at a short distance, but I went, no, I don't want to do the short distance. I actually want to go for the big stuff. And just, I learned a lot from this guy, and he inspired me to take it even further. And I think within 2 years, I was lining up to do my first half Ironman in a destination called Port Macquarie, just north of, well, probably about 3 hours north of Sydney. And it was an amazing. I can still remember it, by the way, and I know my time, by the way, because it's the first one, so I still know my time. And I point that up because I'm not someone that pays attention to those sorts of details much.
Okay.
I know my races to an extent, but I can't tell you the times with absolute confidence. So I do know the time of that one. I think it was 4:47 as I finished my first half Ironman, and
Wonderful.
it hurt like hell. And I went, this is what I found personally. I went, I've got to go back and do better. And so that then
Amazing.
started the whole journey around half Ironman and getting involved in that. And the next year, I lined up for my first full Ironman, and I had probably, the lesson I learned there was I'd probably gone too far, where I thought, to line up for an Ironman, I needed to quit my beer drinking, I needed to not eat chocolates, I needed to take all my, the comfort foods and stuff out of my life, and it's just Ironman. That's all I wanted to do. And
Right.
on reflecting post that race, it was a complete distraction for me. So again, my advice is, don't take away the things that you enjoy. Just, there are times that you may have to limit them a little bit, but don't take them completely out of your life, because like I will never
Right.
not drink beer again for an Ironman, and I've kept that going. So I will drink beer the
Right.
night before an Ironman, not a problem, right? It's like
Right.
I'm happy to do that because it allows me to relax, and it allows me to, just be myself and go into the race, really confident and comfortable with where I'm at that point. So my first Ironman, I had a DNF. So I remember one of your previous guests had a DNF in his first Ironman, and the same for me, where my derailleur on the bike broke at 120
Oh,
kilometers, and my day was done. So that was a DNF for me. What I then did was decided, well, okay, so for me to come back next year and do the same Ironman, I need to be fitter and stronger. And I then spent the next 6 to 8 months absolutely hammering myself, and everything was 100%. There was no recovery. So even if the program said go to recovery, I didn't. I was 100%, and thinking that was the way that was going to get me to the start line, and that was the way that was going to get me to be a better Ironman athlete, because I had failed at the first attempt. That doesn't work, right? Because your body can't sustain that level of effort day in, day out for months. It can't. And so then that led to a number of years of injuries. And it was first of all knee, and then I had to have a knee operation. Then it was the shoulder, and then I had to take 6 months of swimming. Then it was the calf or the Achilles. And I'm pointing this out because it took me it took me 7 years to understand that consistency is king. You know, there's some form where something's an onion, right, layered, and to become an endurance athlete, and maybe it's every athlete, I'm not sure, but in my experience for Ironman, to become an endurance athlete, you've got to layer, and you've got to build, and you've got to be patient, you've got to build, and every set is another coin in the bank, another credit in the bank for which you will withdraw during the race, right? And you just layer it, you layer it, you layer it, you layer it, and when it says easy, it's easy, and it's easy on the day, whatever easy on the day is, in the way I approach things. And if it's moderate, it's moderate on the day, and if it's hard, it's hard on the day. And you just make sure that you're doing the right level of maintenance, and that you're building those layers, and you're building that consistency, because that then gets you to the start line in the best possible position that you can be in to race, right? With what you've got. And I have to be very clear on that, because not everybody has 15, 18, 20, 24 hours a week to train. I don't. Yep. And so, you know, it'll get you to the start line, you know, in a way that you can be true to yourself. So I've done as much as possible. I haven't been hampered by injury. I've made the most out of the time that's been available to me without disrupting the rest of my life, if you have other things that you've got to be responsible for. And this is one of the things I said to you, then you will never have a bad race. That took me 6 or 7 years to learn that. And it was from my current coach, who I get a program from, right? And he was instrumental in the shift to how I approach racing and training, where and I've got to share this because this is really important. I did another half Ironman race just before he took me on, well, just after he took me on, and I said to him, well, do you want to just start coaching me post this half Ironman? He goes, no, I'll just work with you, you know, the week or two before, and then we'll see what comes out of it. And I raced, and I raced the half Ironman, and I think I did. It wasn't a bad time, by the way. I think I might have been top 10 in the age group, right? So I've got to paint this picture. I might have been top 10 in the age group, might have. And I got to the end of the race feeling pretty pissed with myself, because I had really struggled on the run. So I'd had a good swim again. I had a pretty solid bike, and my run was just atrocious. And I just thought I couldn't run. And he gave me this sheet. He said, fill the sheet up for me and tell me what, you know, let's have a look at it, you know, how you rate your race. And the race, it broke down into a number of areas, and it scored it out of 100. So I did that. And at the end of the process, I scored the race at like an 88 out of 100. So an 8.8 out of 10 for a race is actually pretty good. And it made me sit back and go, I focused on the last 20 minutes of a run where I was absolutely buggered. I was knackered, right? And all I could remember was that last 20 minutes that then told me my whole race was crap. In actual fact, I did all these other good things in between, right? And then how do I start to evolve the planning? That was the first thing. The second thing he said to me is, I want you to swim slower. And the third thing he said to me is, I want you to stop using technology. So those 4 years ago, those are the three things that I incorporated into my training plan. And I've never used technology since. Even when I train, I might use technology when I train, but I don't look at the information. He looks at the information. And so I've never had a bad race since, regardless of the time or the position of what I've come. And I think it's one of the biggest learning curves that I've had is be true to yourself, do what you can do, accept what you can do, and then you arrive at the start line going, I'm going to do the best that I can do with what I've got today, and it'll never be a bad race, right? You pay a lot of money to race these things, so why would you not enjoy it?
Obviously. No, that's wonderful. So I want to tell the listeners, you know, there are various takeaways you have got. So listen to them very, very carefully. So to set the ball rolling, Ironman distance, for those who don't know, it's about 3.8 kilometers as well. It's 180 kilometers of cycling and then 40 kilometers of running, one after the another. Right? So you do one event, then second, then third. So it's very, very tiring on the body because I've done a half. I can just relate it to it. That was the one and only time and discipline. Doing one sport is different. You're dedicating yourself to running. That's one. The same kind of effort you want to do in cycling and then looking for a pool, training there. So it's not just 3 times the effort. It's much more than that, right?
Yep.
And this is just one aspect. There are various other aspects. The way he said, got to pace it nicely. Because if you go 100% in swimming, then you do it very badly in your cycling and running, the way Brett was just mentioning. So, there are various things you need to keep in mind. It's just not the distance which is there.
Yeah.
Second point, I would say, the way he said about Sunil Menon. Sunil Menon also had a DNF. He also had a DNF. So there's no shame in having a DNF because once you have a DNF, your learning value, you go mad after that to learn new things, why I went like this, how I should improve. But then make sure you don't do the way Brett did, which means you train day in, day out without taking rest. As if I may say today, I was interacting with 2 of my friends. One is Manoj, again a young boy, and one is another friend, Saraswati sir. It's important to have consistency. You cannot do what Brett has done in 10 years. You think I've learned it, I'll do it in 6 months or a year. Even if you do it, you'll get injured, you'll not be able to get up. I've seen a lot of people and it's very, very disheartening. I know people who have done very well in their 50s, 1 or 2 years, and after that, they've not been able to walk as well. And it really pains me seeing my running buddies whom I used to train for marathons, and now it's difficult for them to walk. They're limping. Once you get injured, everybody knows here, how painful injuries are. You train so hard, you build up your system, and once you get injured, it sets you back more than physically, emotionally. So it's very, very important you don't do such things. Another point, regarding having beer. Apart from timing and physical fitness, the main reason I took to running, and I've seen a lot of other people who do running, swimming, triathlon, whatever, is, it gives you a lot of mental high. Physical is one aspect. You're getting obese, you want to start running, lose weight. Once that is over, that you realize, it's much more than that you get out of it. So don't pressurize yourself by getting into things like personal best or avoiding this kind of food, even once you know it's not sustainable. Like if you know that 1 odd time if you have beer, it's not going to harm. But then if you stress too much about it, then you feel, you're not being able to get a PB also, and you've made so many sacrifices. That's not done. At the end of the day, the aim of all these activities is to give that happiness inside. So whatever makes you feel happy, I think you should do that. Okay, Brett, tell me, there's one thing doing an event well, and there's another thing participating in competitive manner, the way you do. In the sense, even though you say you don't deliberately go for timings and all, but then that's a fact. You've been doing very well. That's why you represented in the World Championship. You participated in Kona. So tell us, how do you manage these kind of things, even if you're not being so competitive? And how was your Kona experience?
Okay, so there's 2 questions, and thank you, because the first one's actually I wanted to add to what you've said, which is around this is probably one of the biggest things that I've picked up in the last 4 or 5 years, and that's, I'm going to use the word ego. I'm sure, by the way, everybody has an ego, right? So let's just be honest. And the ego either influences you to compare yourself consistently with someone else, or what it will do, it will deflate you because you've seen someone else do something, and it takes away the self-confidence. And for much of my sporting and personal professional career, I've had a low self-confidence. So let me give you an example. I would be in the swim, I would come out the water first, I would ride pretty well, and maybe a few people would come past me on the bike, and I'd look at them and go, oh, okay, well, whatever, they're obviously stronger bikers than me. And then I'd get onto the run, and my confidence would be low because I don't think I've told myself I'm not a good runner, and I would then give up on that run because I'm not a good runner, right? So then people would pass me. And I think one of the things that I've done is, and I'm going back to, you can only do what you do best on the day, if you're honest with yourself, is I let my ego go. And I went, I don't care what other people are doing, right? I don't care. That's not nothing I can control today. Today, I cannot control what they do. I can't control the weather. I can't control what this bloke over there is doing. It's nothing. I'm here to do what I can do because I love the sport. I love the challenge. I love to be competitive. Yeah, for sure. And I just want to give it a red hot go. That's an Aussie thing, right? I want to give it a go. And when I finally understood that my ego was probably a barrier to a lot of my performance, and let that go, it released the shackles. And I can tell you now, right? I train hard, right? I do. I have to train, right? I love it. I love running. I love swimming. I love biking these days. I love working towards something. So I love to train, and I will pretty much arrive at an event now going, I'm here to have an absolute blast. I'm here to have fun. I've paid money for this, so I've sacrificed a lot for this. This is for me, and I don't care what anyone else is doing. But I tell you what, they're going to have to work hard to beat me. So I don't care whether they go past me, but I'm not going to give it to them. And so that's the shift. That's the shift that I went through, and I can remember the race that I was in, and I was out there riding in this horrible weather, and it was rain coming sideways, and I got to the end of the bike, and my feet were frozen. I couldn't feel them, and I knew I was fit, and I came into the transition, and I got off the bike and started running, and three blokes came past me, and they ran past me, and I thought, here we go again. And then I went, hang on a minute, you 1 kilometer into your run, how do you even know what's going on there? Just relax, take your time, what have you. By 9 kilometers, I'd passed all three of them again. And that was the kickstart that I went, I can do this. I understand the mindset that I need to have. And if I get beaten by someone, good on them. Good job. Well done, guys. Right. But I'm not going to give it to you. And so that was the first sort of, change in my approach and my mindset around ego. Ego is a terrible thing, right? Let it go. Put it at the door. Don't give your race away, but leave your ego at the door, because you can't control other people. The second thing is you asked around is Hawaii. So for anyone who does shifting gears a little bit, anyone who does triathlon, Kona is the pinnacle of our sport, right? There is no better. There is no higher thing for us, really. And I wanted to go to Kona, and it took me to that race to believe that I could get there, right? When I raced and I ran past those guys and I finished strong, I ran a wicked half marathon off the bike. I had a cracking time, and I went, "Oh, Jesus, shit! I can actually do this." And from there, all my results led me to the Kona qualification, right? So the belief, the ego was out, the belief was in there. It led to the self-belief, and away I went. So to go to Kona was the cream, the icing on the top of my cake for me. So I never went to Kona to go and race. I went to Kona to participate, to be honest, absolutely honest, right? And it is a brutal, but it's the most awesome experience I've had. I got so badly cooked on that race, from dehydration and heat exhaustion and all sorts of bits and pieces, that I had to have a lot of treatment for about 9 months afterwards. But it was the best experience ever. I drank like a fish every night. I got on the grog at every opportunity. I walked 100 miles leading into the race. I swam every day in the ocean. I just soaked up the entire atmosphere, and it is one of the best experiences of my life, and I'm very grateful to be able to have done that. I'm very privileged to be able to have done that, and it is anyone who knows about Kona and knows about firstly about the event in itself, it's amazing. You understand. You need to go to understand why people go back year after year, right? I never knew that. I thought, well, if you've done it once, why would you go back there again? I now know, right? I'm going back there again one day. I'm going back to race, not to participate. Just to be clear.
Oh, wonderful.
Because the course got the better of me. The conditions of Kona, the course itself isn't tough. The conditions are the most horrendous, and the heat. I mean, maybe the folks in India, you guys are more used to it than us, right? But the heat is incredible. And when everybody says to you, you've got to drink more fluid, you times that by 10. I was so dehydrated. It was terrible. The atmosphere in Hawaii is the most amazing, right? Outside of New Zealand. New Zealand's amazing. But the atmosphere in Hawaii is incredible. You line up and you bump into pros all day long. I mean, and our sport is one of the very, very few that you can actually engage in a conversation with a professional, right? You can engage in the world number one, and they'll have a conversation with you right there, right?
Right.
It's amazing. And so, you know, I still pinch myself that I managed to get there. I mean, I know I put the hard work in, but I said, wow, okay, I got there. I experienced it. I got beaten by the course and the conditions. Oh, you know, it was my slowest Ironman. It was definitely my slowest Ironman by about 30 minutes. I met so many people on the run course who were suffering just as badly as I was. I mean, wow, it was hard work, but it was probably the most incredible experience of it. And I'll show you something. This is what when you come through the finishing line, they give you this set of beads, and they give you that,
Oh, wow.
which is pretty cool. And I love that. And then here is that is the Hawaii Ironman finishing medal, right? So there is, that took me 10 years to get, right? So it's something that is very important to me. I appreciate it. And I use that both in my sporting and my professional career, by the way, because self-confidence and self-belief is a barrier both in sport, because I didn't believe I was good enough to win a race in Ironman.
Right.
And when I broke that barrier and went, actually, I'm good enough, I've taken that into my career as well in some aspects and gone, I am good enough. So I'll stop there.
Exactly. No, that's wonderful. I mean, it's such a treat listening to you. I mean, seeing the passion in your eyes. I mean, amazing. I mean, it's as if we were there in your journey of Kona. I mean, amazing. Really enjoy it. Okay, but then tell me, it's so much about Kona. You've said, let the viewers know what's a typical training week once you're moving to a race like that.
Yeah, that's a good question, because I started off my first 6 or 7 years probably doing 20 to 24 hours a week, which is not sustainable, right? I mean, for me personally, this is me, both in time and in body. My body just couldn't handle that level of training. So I've settled back down to I think I've got a really good way of working now, and I'll probably sit on average 12 hours a week of training.
Okay.
At the moment. And when I move, and if I take it from a 16-week block, so 16 weeks out of an Ironman, doesn't matter which Ironman it is. If I take 16 weeks is typically where we go, I'll spend that first 6 to 8 weeks of doing 12 to 14 hours a week of training. And then I'll spend the next 6 weeks of somewhere between 14 and 16 hours a week of training a week. And then you bring it back down again. 16 hours is a lot of time, but bearing in mind, I've got a huge base. Like my base level is massive, right? So that's always important when you sort of think, oh, so I can do an Ironman on 12. You can do an Ironman on 12 hours a week. You can do an Ironman on 8 hours a week, but you're probably going to do it in about 16 hours. Whereas, at the age group competitive level, which is where I'm trying to play it a lot of the time, or where my intentions are to be, for me, it's somewhere between 12 to 16 hours a week is sustainable for me to still meet my family obligations and my work obligations.
Correct. So I'm sure, two things. one is the work-life balance obviously has to be there with family balance, because
Yep.
if anywhere you found lacking, then it weighs you in the other thing as well. That's a very
Yep.
important thing. And other thing, very rightly brought out, once you get that confidence that you can go to Kona, or for that matter, anything which you've been aiming for, then that is reflected in other aspects of life as well, be it your
Correct,
work,
it does.
be it, family relation, the whole
Yep.
personality. It's not that if you get rid of your ego, it's not just only in the sports. As a personality, you get rid of those things. So very, very
Absolutely.
nicely brought out.
Yep. Absolutely.
Okay, another incident which you were mentioning was an event wherein there was someone who was 20 minutes ahead of you in a marathon leg of the Ironman, and still you managed to hit the podium. I mean, the
Yeah.
age group. So tell
Yep.
us about that.
Well, that's so that was the Ironman in New Zealand that I won my age group, which
Okay.
I still pinch myself. I still can't believe I'm an age group champion in Ironman, right? I mean, it's like, really? I mean, really? I drink beer, guys. Come on. Anyway, but
Great.
but one of the lessons I've learned is, I think, and this is relevant in any racing, is you got to pick your course that plays to your strengths. So if you're willing to qualify for Kona, in my example, right? So let's be very specific. I'm trying to qualify for
Sure.
Kona, and so therefore, what courses are going to be suitable for me? I'm not a small guy, by the way. You can't see me sitting here, but I'm 78 to 80 kilos as a triathlete. That's pretty big, and I'm not a fast runner. So for me to go to a flat course is not going to suit me, right? So I'm a strong swimmer, I'm a strong biker, and I'm a mediocre runner. So I know that having the 3.8K swim doesn't really make a difference, but having a bike course that's hilly plays a bit to my strengths, because it sort of takes a lot of the power out of the lightweight runners, and then having a hilly run course does the same thing. So understand where your strengths are, whatever the event is, by the way. Know your strengths, and if you're trying to qualify for something, then go to a course or a competition where it's going to play to your strengths. So as an example, Western Australia Ironman is a flat course. Pointless me going there, right? Because all those fast whippets, we call them, those fast light guys, they can bike fast and they can run fast and their legs are good. Put them in the hills, they struggle. So I've chosen a course that's hilly because it suits my strengths in how I race. So that day, though, what else played into my advantage for that day was it was very, very windy. So the water was very rough. The bike course was particularly difficult because of the headwind, and so I finished being a strong swimmer. I got out the water. I don't know. I think somewhere between 8 to 10 minutes ahead of that guy that came second. I then finished the bike leg an additional 14 minutes faster than he did, or something along those lines. And then my transition times were 3 or 4 minutes quicker than what his were over the course of the Ironman, right? But he ran a 3:06 marathon, and I ran a 3:26 marathon, and I still managed to beat him by 3 or 4 minutes, right? So this is why Ironman is, it's not a run, it's not a swim, it's not a bike, it's not there's swim, bike, run, there's pacing, there's nutrition, and there's transitions. That's what takes an Ironman into account, right? And so that guy lost the championship because he might have been able to run faster than me, but the other two legs in his transition, just weren't as good, as sharp as mine on the day.
Wonderful.
On another day, it might have been different.
Yeah, I mean, every day is different, especially in a sport like that. It's great. Now we have one question from Commander Rasudi. He wants to know, are you from Australia or are you from Zimbabwe?
I'm born in Zimbabwe. I'm now Australian.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
Okay, so one more question. Just let me check. Okay, which is your favorite part? Cycling, swimming, or running? Out of
running.
Three, which is your strongest? Strongest as well.
Well, naturally, my strongest is is swimming. It's naturally that, um, and it's because I've been doing that all my life, right? And I think I might have mentioned to you earlier, I actually swim slower than I'm capable of swimming, because
Right.
that allows me to keep myself fresh for the back end of the race, right? So I can swim a significantly faster leg than I do at the moment. So, but I always find I still find the swim quite interesting, and I find myself quite nervous. The bike, I'm strong on the bike, and I'm pretty strong on the bike actually. And
Okay.
that, by the way, the bike just takes time. Swimming is technique, bike, time in the saddle, keep at it. You will build your strength and your endurance and your speed up. So just keep going at the bike. But I'm lucky with my swim and bike combination that allows me to support what is probably a mediocre run. I'm not the fastest runner, but in Ironman, you don't need to be fast. You just need to be strong.
Right. Great. Okay. Now another question is, it says that if you have to give any one advice to would-be triathletes, what would that be? If somebody wants to get into triathlons, how should they be training, or any advice you want to give?
I think surround yourself with friends. That's how it stuck with me, right? When I started, I connected with lots of people from the club and just asked lots of questions, and just really learned the sport and learned the camaraderie. What I love about triathlon is they celebrate first place the exact same way they celebrate last place, by the way. And when I say last, the
Very right.
last finish,
Yeah.
the last finisher, we call them finishers, not last place. It's the last finisher.
Okay.
And when you embrace that community, it's amazing, right? And people are so helpful, and it's so much fun. And so, have fun. Just get out there, have fun, make a lot of friends, make a lot of connections. And in the beginning, and
Right.
now I'm a bit more conscious about how I use my time, but certainly go out there and surround yourself with lots of fun people.
Okay. Nice. Now another question is from Rehan. He wants to know, uh, you've said you've limited the use of technology. Elaborate more. How that has helped you in becoming a
Yep.
better athlete, a
Yeah.
triathlete. Sorry.
Yeah. And again, so I'm talking to my personal experience. This isn't for everybody. I've got friends that love technology. I've been through the whole circle where I had no technology at the beginning. Then people told me you need technology to do pace, power on the bike, you name it, right? All these stats. I'm not a statistical person, right? That's not. That's why I'm not into data scientist or anything like that. So the numbers don't interest me as much as how I feel and how I execute. So that's why I've got a coach. He looks at my numbers and tells me if I'm on track or off track, right? That's his job. Right? He just says to me, I want you to do it at 80%. And today 80% feels X, and tomorrow 80% will feel Y. I don't really
Right.
focus on that. But the learning that I had from a technology perspective was one of the Ironman I did in Melbourne. And I had trained using technology, and I'm going to be very specific here because I can remember it. And on the bike, was my racing power, I was using what we call a power meter. My racing power was 240 to 250 watts for the bike. That's what I should have been able to race at. And my heart rate was at 70% using those outputs. On the day, I was holding that output, but my heart rate was about 15% higher, right? But I thought, well, that's doesn't matter. I've got to hold 240 watts because that's what I've said I'm going to do, and that's what my plan is. I ran a 4-hour 20 marathon at the end because I absolutely burnt myself out of it. And the reflection I had was, don't let the technology control you. Let it guide you. Let it guide you. Let it be a sign or a star. That's what you're wanting to do, but don't let it rule you in terms of your outputs, whether it be in training or whether it be in racing. And so therefore, from there onwards, I've never worn a watch in a race since. And it's just like, I'll just race what I can on the day. And my feeling will determine how I go. you then have to question yourself a lot more. I'm constantly checking on my body, and it sounds a bit strange to say, but I'm constantly, am I able to sustain this pace for the next 50 kilometers or 30 kilometers? Am I able to keep this swim rate up? Am I able to run at this pace? Do I really think that I can run this pace for 42 kilometers? And you got to be really honest. I'll go back right to the beginning. I said, you've got to be honest with yourself and go, actually, no, I can't. And which means you got to let the ego go, because someone's going to run past you, and you got to let them go and go, yeah, I'll see you in 40 kilometers, mate.
I think
So
with a lot of experience only this is possible. Otherwise, for a person who is not well trained, it's very, very difficult, because unlike just running, you're starting with swimming, you're doing a cycling, and then for the run also, it's difficult to pace yourself if you don't know if your target pace is, let's say, 4:35, whatever. So it's very, very difficult. But then I think with practice and a lot of commitment, only this is going to come. Okay, one last question. Sorry.
Yep, go. I was going to say, of
Please,
course,
go ahead.
it comes with practice, and you know, I can only tell you that it's ego telling you to run faster or bike faster or swim faster, right?
Obviously.
Don't you can't control that person that's gone past you. And I have many examples where I've gone past someone and they've come back past me, or they've come past me and I've found them again down the track, right? So enjoy it, enjoy the experience, revel in it. You know, you'll see them at the finish line.
That's right. You know, one last question. Before that, I'll request everyone to switch on the cameras. We can have a group photograph, selfies like that. So, you know, any sport like this requires lots of commitment from time, from the family support and all. How has your family support been into all this? Because you've been in this for so long.
Yep.
How have you managed your family time, and what has their support been in this?
I have an amazing wife. Let me tell you, she not once has there ever been a problem with me doing what I do. So that's the first thing, is that, you know, I'm privileged to have that. And the second thing is, what I do is I do all my training very early in the morning at 4 a.m. so that I am done before 7 a.m. during the week, so that I can help with the kids getting them ready for school. Yep. So I'm lucky that I'm an early riser, but that's what I do. And I do not really train at night. So once I get home from work, that's my family time. So that's as a general rule, that's how I work. But you've got to have the wife on board and the family on board. And that may mean adjusting your ambitions, because I think too often I've heard of too many stories where people have put Ironman as a priority ahead of their family, and that's resulted in a not a good outcome, right? And I would never put that medal that I showed you earlier ahead of my family. Wouldn't be worth it, right? So I'm lucky that my wife has always been supportive of that, but I've also made sure that I'm not eating into family time any more than I have to.
Absolutely. So, Brett, amazing talk. I mean, I really enjoyed every bit of it. Thank you so much for your time. I know it's much past midnight, but then thanks so much for obliging us. Thank you so much, viewers. I am sure you had great learning today. We'll be sharing the link on YouTube. If you like it, do like on YouTube as well, and do subscribe, share with your friends. Thank you, Brett, once again. Looking forward to your next adventure. Thank you so much.
No worries. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. Good night.